All right, my name is Sean Pierce, and in today's video I wanted to talk about the importance of learning how to move 3D, learning how to move multiplanar with the kettlebell before or during your juggling journey. Now when it comes to juggling, things start to get complex. Not only are we learning how to coordinate our flips in front of the body, but then what we need to do to develop a well-rounded kettlebell practice in juggling is learn how to stack those flips onto 3D movement patterns. Now when it comes to moving 3D with the bells or moving multiplanar, there's 3 planes of movement that we dive into, all of which are taught in my latest course, The Art of Kettlebell Moving 3D. Those planes are our sagittal plane, moving forwards and backwards, our frontal plane, moving side to side, also called our lateral plane, and then our transverse plane, which is rotating side to side. Now, how I progress and methodically teach this progression of movement throughout my course is learning our fundamentals in front of the body. So learning our swing clean, our swing snatch, and then venturing into a little bit of rotation by adding in our tactical switches. We do some cool things. We do those switches into our lunges and different patterns to spice things up. But that's an example of how we will progress our sagittal plane movement patterns. Now laterally, we deep dive quite a bit. And so not only are we learning how to do our cast side to side, we're also learning different transitions, going side to side, and the footwork that goes along with lateral movement, which is unique to lateral movement. We're also learning how to go overhead and look at combining our lateral movements to end up in our overhead position. And then finally, we're also diving into our lateral swings, which is a hinged-based movement that adds all the elements of a swing with rotation. So it's a really cool functional exercise as well for developing power rotationally with that hinge pattern. And then we have our figure 8 sequence. So we have our lateral pattern, side to side. We have our sagittal patterns, moving forwards and backwards. And then our figure 8 is really cool because it combines a lot together. We're moving sagittally because we're moving forwards and backwards. We're moving laterally because we get this diagonal pull and push across the body. And then we're also introducing rotation. So when we go into our patterns, especially adding movements like our slingshot and overhead variations, we add a degree of rotation. And so we have our sagittal plane movement. We're able to move forwards and backwards. We have our lateral plane movement, and then we also have rotation cooked into it all. We combine all of these together, and by the end of the course, after 60 plus skills, after almost 20 different combinations or flows that I guide you through, we have this mastery of being able to move 3D. We can move all around the body with ease. Now, what does that give us in terms of our juggling journey? And I want to make this very practical so I can show you how everything methodically translates over to refining your juggling practice. So when we start to move in front of the body, of course, we learn all of our flips. So I deep dive the pendulum swing. That gives us the ability to learn our flips in front of the body. And I have a free guide on learning your first 3 flips as well. You can download that and jump into that and learn those flips. But if we want to evolve from there and start creating a juggling practice that is truly free, that is truly explorative and utilizes all this beautiful sphere of movement potential around the body, we then have to stack our 3D movements onto or with our juggling skills. For example, one of the reasons why we learn our casts, moving side to side, is that it gives us the ability to comfortably and easily add in our lateral flips. So we have our cross body flips and our side body flips, and we can combine all of those flips, oblique, helicopter, etc., etc. We also have, when moving laterally, an access point to learning our mills. So we deep dive how to cast and end up overhead, like so. This is our outside cast, inside snatch. And what this turns into, it presents us the mechanics that we need to learn our mills. And so the same pattern of movement, my body is coordinating in the same way. I'm just adding on a flip on top. Likewise, with patterns that look cool by themselves, like our bottoms up transition, actually turns into different kinds of flips and tricks. Same movement pattern, we're adding on flips on top. Now you could imagine how difficult, and this is where there still needs to be education in the juggling space, which is why one of the main reasons why I wanted to create this course was because people would come to me with their juggling requests. People would come to me wanting to learn how to juggle without understanding that there's a lot that lies below the surface that's important to look at before venturing into juggling. For example, if you haven't built that coordination and moving side to side, it's very difficult to learn movements like this that take us side to side, because you haven't built up the confidence or the competence to really be able to isolate your planes of movement. And then the knees start getting in the way. Hopefully other things don't get in the way, but it can become challenging. So by building a base of 3D movement, we are preparing ourselves and building the confidence required to start moving more, start moving in this beautiful sphere of potential around the body. Now we have our figure 8 sequences. This is a really cool sequence that has us traveling behind the body, behind the leg, slightly side to side. And then we add different tactical switches on top of that. And in that course, we add steps. We add some cool things to that. But what does a figure 8 pattern turn into? It turns into a lot of different things. At its most basic form, it allows us access to adding in flips, as well as these diagonal patterns across the body. For example, I can add a helicopter and then travel behind me. But because I've opened up this diagonal movement across the body, I can use that for a number of different things. What it also opens up is the ability to explore behind your body by going through the legs. For example, different tricks that happen behind the legs. We have our simple throw behind the leg. We have different transitions that happens. And then we also have more complex skills on the higher end of the complexity of movements like our wolf flip. Same pattern of movement, but because I've built a confidence in being able to move between my legs, it opens up what's available with our juggling practice. And so, once again, the importance of learning these movements helps coordinate us, help prepare us for the dangers and risks that juggling also poses. It's not easy to start a juggling practice without visiting those 3D movements. So I wanted to create this video to show you how important it is to start slow, to start with patience, and build a foundation before we start looking at all of the cool things. There's a lot of shiny objects in this world. shiny object syndrome, I think some people call it, where they're reaching for what looks really cool without an understanding of what has taken place prior to build yourself up to that level of skill. And so another example is our lateral patterns. So if I have my lateral swing, and the way I coordinate the hinge and the movement of the bell arching across my body allows me access to movements like our back toss, for example. Same hinge, and because I've built up not only the coordination with the bell, but the strength required to do that movement, I can add on that flip variation much more easily. The last point I want to make is moving 3D and learning how to access more movement potential around the body is also how we can build functional strength in all of these planes of movements. For example, right now I'm learning a lot of classic juggling, and that's done with a 16 kilogram bell, which is no lightweight considering you're throwing it so high up in the air. This is a 10 kg. So there's a lot of torque on the body. There's a lot of not only strength required to navigate moving that bell exactly where you need it without getting injured, the pull on your muscles, and there's also just a lot of power required. And so one of the ways that I train to juggle is that I will load up the weight on my 3D patterns. For example, if I'm working on my 16 kg mills, what I'm gonna do is grab a 24 kg, create my stance, and practice and hone in the ability to do my outside cast, inside snatches. And this gives me the ability to have my muscles and my movement adapt to the needs that's required for that movement. Another option too is looking at movements like our bottoms up transition. Learning how to weight bear with a heavier weight allows your body to learn how to efficiently adapt to the weight that's required. So later on down the road, this movement just becomes a float because I've learned how to not only move stronger, but I've learned how to move more efficiently. Things take place much more smooth. Basic strength like our cast, our lateral swings, also translates into our ability to move behind the body, as well as gives us more flexibility or a base of strength from which we can complexify our movement or diversify our movement. For an example, multiple flips. So if I learn how to do a swing and our flip, we can progress through multiple flips by adding more power. Not only power, but that coordination, that ability to punch out at the right moment. And so by adding on weight to our snatches, our cleans, I build a base of power and strength required to then add more flips and power into my movements. And this is true with all juggling skills. So that's all I wanted to leave you with today. I wanted to introduce how important it is to move 3D. Learn how to move functionally with the kettlebells, and by functionality, there's a lot of different meanings for that word. We're learning how to move in more ways, learning how to coordinate more of the body that translate over to sport-specific skills, in this case juggling, as well as daily life. When we start to move 3D, we're learning how to rotate, just as we would in sports. We're learning how to move, hinge, and coordinate all this movement that is more of a proper resemblance to the way life is, which is strange, which is spontaneous, And by learning how to diversify that movement, we build this base of confidence for all different slips, failures, and falls. So that's it for today's video. I wanted to leave you with that. If you're interested in learning how to move 3D and really maximize and optimize your potential to move, not only with the kettlebell, but move in general, go ahead and head over to theartofkettlebell.com. Use code MOVE3D for 20% off, and you'll have lifetime access plus a ton of awesome bonuses that I've thrown in. So without further ado, we'll see you inside that journey. Catch you soon.